So Framber Valdez to the Detroit Tigers, let's start there. And this gives the Detroit Tigers a rotation that I think can compete with any rotation in the American League, at least for this year. And at first I was very alarmed when I saw this signing because, of course, my first initial thought was, well, then Tarik Skubal isn't going to be back. They've prioritized signing Framber Valdez. He's basically a backup ace. If Tarik Skubal leaves after this year, Framber Valdez will take his place as the ace of the team. It's basically a contingency plan for if Tarik Skubal leaves, and my initial thought was, okay, so Tarik Skubal is leaving. I expect to see negativity from Tigers fans. But unsurprisingly, you do see a lot of Tigers fans saying, well, this shows a willingness to spend money. This doesn't necessarily say that they're not going to re-sign Tarik Skubal, and according to reports, the Tigers are still negotiating with Tarik Skubal. But to be honest with you, I'm not optimistic, and I don't think that this necessarily takes any pressure off the Detroit Tigers or makes this season for the Detroit Tigers any less about Tarik Skubal and whether or not he's leaving. I don't think that this is a team that's necessarily getting any World Series consideration if you take away Tarik Skubal. They have a productive offense. They have a playoff offense even. But nothing about the team screams World Series caliber other than the rotation with Tarik Skubal at the top. I don't think this will be a World Series level team once Tarik Skubal leaves. This year is still the chance, and I don't know if this team is ready or has spent enough money or invested enough to reliably have a team that can do that can challenge a team like the Yankees, that can challenge a team like the Blue Jays. You know, they had a dominant first half, a bad second half, and now they're bringing in somebody who, let's be honest, is most well known right now for trying to hit his own catcher with a pitch, and just from that, clearly is not a guy you would want in your clubhouse. So it's purely a talent move. It's purely a baseball move. It's purely a win now move from the Tigers. And if he doesn't work well in the clubhouse, they're left with him for 2 additional years after Skubal leaves. And the problem here is Skubal is a next level pitcher. He is a clear level above Framber Valdez in terms of talent. And Framber Valdez isn't actually a replacement for Tarik Skubal. When Tarik Skubal leaves, the Tigers are going to become a worse team. So in my opinion, this is about to be one of the most pressure-packed Tigers seasons in, since what, the 2000s? For no other reason than this player's contract. There's no actual on-field baseball reason why this season should be so pressure-packed other than this player's contract. And now because of Tarik Skubal's contract, you've potentially added a negative clubhouse influence to the mix. And thankfully, and we'll get onto this more so, this is a pretty deflated economy right now for free agents. Framber Valdez not getting anywhere near the contract you'd expect, just like a Eugenio Suarez. And sure, is part of the reason players over 30 and the devaluation of players over 30 in the free agent market. Absolutely, that is part of the reason. But unfortunately for Framber Valdez, another part of the reason is the clubhouse issue. And you have to ask if, that episode, I guess you can describe it, that he had where he tried to throw at his own catcher, cost him a significantly bigger contract. And we'll move on to Eugenio Suarez, heading back to the Cincinnati Reds, the team that he has spent most of his career on. And the reason why this contract isn't quite as big as you would have expected is a little more obvious that Suarez is almost 35, as well as being a right-handed bat. However, he hit 49 home runs last year. So it's very hard to justify such a significant contract markdown and such a small market for a player with a great bat, albeit someone who definitely does not have plus defense at third base anymore. But honestly, people can be mad at this. As a Yankee fan, I would still take Eugenio Suarez over Ryan McMahon. The massive boost in offensive production that brings, adding that many home runs and that much of a threat into the middle of the lineup, I think absolutely trumps the inconsistent offensive production that a player like Ryan McMahon provides, even with a solid glove. And I remember a day where, 34 and a half years old wasn't, that old. You could still get reliable production, especially in a 1-year contract. It being an under $20 million contract, it just seems strange for it only being 1 year. It definitely indicates a deflated economy for free agent contracts, or especially for free agent contracts that aren't super deals and that aren't for, guys over the age of 30 something. What that actual age is where teams are cutting it off and saying, no, we're not going to give you a big free agent deal. I'm not sure what that is at this point, but clearly Eugenio Suarez is falling on the older side of that to the extent where the contract is clearly getting devalued, the And of course, part of this is the fact that, the there's clearly an emotional connection with Suarez and the Reds. Suarez clearly has a home there. He's played there more than any other team, and he's been on very many teams. I think it could have been an example of just wanting to come back to a team that, he sees has risen in quality. It's, they speaking of a good defensive third baseman, Cabrian Hayes on the Reds, but they have plenty of good young players, Ellie De La Cruz, Sal Stewart, Hunter Green. It's an exciting project they have in Cincinnati, and unfortunately, they're just a team that doesn't spend money like you would like. Well, Suarez, that's another reason for the Suarez deal and the low amount of money. I think it's the fact that it's a contract with the Cincinnati Reds. I don't know if Suarez would have known that he was negotiating with the Yankees if the contract wouldn't have been significantly bigger. I think the Yankees probably would have had to have forked out over $20 million to get Eugenio Suarez, while the Reds get a bit of a pay cut. I'm not trying to whine and cry and say, oh, the Yankees are discriminated against or something like that. No, absolutely not. It's just the way of the world. It's just the way of doing business. Baseball is a business. And no team knows baseball is a business quite like the Colorado Rockies, do they? The Colorado Rockies made a couple interesting moves for Jake McCarthy and Edward Julian, and this is the kind of move I feel like the Rockies should have been making for a little while, taking some more chances on some younger players, some guys who maybe haven't made it with other major league clubs, especially lefty bats, guys that both Julian and McCarthy I know can get on base. Julian especially known for his walk rate if his bat tends to lack a little bit of the pop you would hope would be there. McCarthy also lacks a little bit of the pop you'd hope would be there. But again, I understand it. You're the Colorado Rockies, and it's not just the thin air in Denver that makes that the offensive environment that it is. It's also the large outfield, and you hope that you can develop a little bit of gap power in a guy like Julian or a guy like McCarthy. If you can't develop that over the fence power to get the ball out of there, you can at least get them higher batting averages, higher OPSs, higher slugging percentages playing in Coors Field. It's nice to see the Rockies sticking less with, purely bringing up the guys from their minor league system, because I think that's how you end up with one of the worst teams in Major League history. The Rockies took a lot of chances on a lot of prospects from inside their system, not only over the last few years, but especially in their opening day roster last year. They took a lot of chances on a lot of young guys. So it's nice to see them try to find some talent from around the rest of the league at least and get themselves some help. That being said, the situation in Colorado is still really inexcusable. You've got a deflated market at this point, and it's a perfect opportunity for the Rockies to pick up some players in free agency, but I still don't know the last time other than, Chris Bryant that the Rockies have signed a free agent. But in my opinion, I think the Rockies might be a little deeper into their rebuild, farther away from contention than even the Chicago White Sox were 2 years ago when they actually did set the record for worst record of all time. The White Sox seem to have done an okay job of finding some young talent and getting themselves into a little bit more of a respectable position. Whereas I don't really know what the future is for the Rockies right now. They've never really been able to reliably develop pitching. And I don't really see the kind of high-powered offense that you would expect from a contending Rockies team anywhere in this group of players, unfortunately. So I think it's going to be years more of struggle, unfortunately, in Denver for baseball fans, unless something really, really drastic changes, and I'm not really sure what that would be. But the rotation hasn't been fixed. The bullpen still isn't any good. Michael Lorenzen isn't going to change that. Quite sadly, I think we're headed into another season where the Colorado Rockies are going to be probably the single worst team in the MLB record-wise. I would be surprised if there managed to be another team with a worse record than them this year, although I would be surprised if they were worse than the year before. They're definitely an older team this year, and they definitely have more major league experience on the roster than they did on opening day last year, so that's a good sign, if anything. And let's talk about the Mets to end the video. Freddy Peralta gives them the pitching help that they really, really desperately needed. He isn't a lefty, but I mean, hell yeah, for the Mets, that's the guy. And to take him from, to be honest, the National League rival in Milwaukee, a bit of an underrated National League rival. The Mets like to think of themselves as competing with the big boys in the NL East and the Dodgers, but no, they should be worrying about the Brewers just as much as any other team, especially with the pitching core the Brewers have. And they just took a significant dent out of that. They had to pay to get it. Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams are two guys that I would have been keeping a hold of if I was the Mets. And it's, classic stuff from the Brewers there, getting two guys who I think are going to maybe even excel at the next level from the Mets. Two guys I think the Mets really should have had some pause before they parted with those two players. But Freddy Peralta, he really might be worth it. He's an ace, and he gives the Mets much, much more consistency and much, much more depth. And this is a very, very deep team right now, the Mets, actually. And that's very, very important. I question the Mets at the upper end, the top end talent, right? I don't know if the Mets have the top end talent to win a World Series. But in terms of depth, they're fine. They've got 6 starters. They've got some players on the bench that would be starting for a lot of other teams in the MLB, and Vientos, Mauricio, Tyrone Taylor. And, also importantly, a very deep lineup. A lineup with a lot of guys who can do damage, a lot of guys who are going to be able to get hot and keep the dog days of summer a little bit shorter for the Mets. And while superstars are key to consistency in this league, and, having a player like Shohei Ohtani gives you a whole other level of consistency, and there's nobody really like that for the Mets. Bo Bichette helps. You better believe Freddy Peralta helps too with consistency, and this team is going to be probably a lot more consistent this year than they were last year, and that's a very, very important thing. So like and subscribe for more baseball content about New York baseball. I'm going to have some more historical videos coming up on the channel. We're going to have World Baseball Classic content as well. They're going to announce the rosters tonight. I'll see when I get my preview video out for that, but the tournament doesn't start till next month, but I'm going to be covering that extensively, probably more intensively than I ever cover anything involving the MLB, to be honest with you. Keep an eye out for the live streams, and throw a like and a sub on the video and on all the streams that I do, and I will see you guys in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in.